Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. This one really is going to be quick because I'm out to lunch, so I got to go really quickly. But I wanted to just briefly touch on Prince Harry's. He's taking the phone hacking trial to court, right? This is not going to be like, I'll do a proper video about that trial when all the stuff kind of comes out about it. But something that I wanted to kind of go over in this video, just briefly, is I saw a tweet which I'm going to put on the screen. Any father would be proud to stand by a son at these kinds of moments, but Charles chose to hire former Daily Fail staff instead of standing up for his son. Go Harry. And a lot of Harry hashtags. And this really struck me. So this is kind of like a more emotional, psychological family dynamics video rather than something on the actual trial because there's so much to be said there. Also, I have to say, I am very much against the kind of doorstepping of people, you know, like public figures when journalists hide outside their houses and stuff like that. But I will make an exception to say that they were outside Piers Morgan's house the other day. That man is squirming. And we saw a lot of Darvo with him going on because he suddenly tried to change things to say, oh, actually, the real victims, I'm in fact the real victim. The royals are the real victims. Like, he's all over the place. It's like, that man is panicking, and it makes a lot of sense of a lot of his output recently. It's kind of like a two-tiered thing, isn't it? Because this is just my opinion, by the way. Like, I think the first part with him we've covered is that he obviously was a fan of Meghan, felt kind of like abandoned by her. Like, it's like he imagined that they were going to have more of a relationship than they had. I don't know if that means friendship. I don't know if that means like celebrity-wise, connection-wise, relationship-wise. I don't even know. But after that moment, you know, his bitterness has been pretty severe. But also with Harry, you know, there's obviously the fact that Harry's taking them to court. And there's a very real threat with Harry. And they've played this the wrong way as well, just psychologically speaking. And this is why I feel like, although the tabloids and those in power can feel really powerful and like overwhelming sometimes, they're actually not as smart as they think they are, because they have misjudged this spectacularly. Because if they understood psychology and they understood Harry and the sort of person he was, the last thing they wanted to be doing, if they wanted to get away with all this, was to be trying to basically intimidate him, right? Them ramping up on Meghan and trying to attack him further is the last thing that you want to do with a personality like Harry, because Harry was born and raised to be this kind of shield character for his brother, right? He's going to put himself in the line of fire and he's not going to back down from a fight. What a ridiculous, I can't even, like, the way they've fudged this is quite spectacular. Because if they understood him as a human being, which is the problem, because they can't and they don't, hence how they've treated him, they would know that if they wanted this to go away, then that's not how you deal with it. So they've spectacularly fumbled this, and Harry's not backing down, and now they're panicking and getting really angry, and it will be really interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, psychologically speaking, because we haven't got long here today, but I was thinking about, you know, the reaction of Charles and William to this, and I know there's a lot more to this than just psychologically, because it seems like from Spare and from other things Harry has said that, you know, their camps are working with the press, right? So we've got William taking a sort of payment, like a hush money kind of payment, and not disclosing that, and we don't know what was the deal there. Like, it sounds like there's probably been some sort of deal. You know, what else did they promise him? What's part of the agreement there? You know, how has he got himself this better treatment? Because if you'll notice, he's been really absent from the papers a lot, and there's been a lot of pro-Kate stuff at the moment. And we also know that Charles and Camilla obviously have been in bed with the tabloids. You know, Camilla's lunch that she had, where she had Piers Morgan and Jeremy Clarkson there, like two of Meghan's biggest abusers. And it is so messed up, because if you just think about it as a father and his son, right? You think about Charles and Harry. Why on earth would any father, a good father, not be so proud of what Harry's doing here? Because essentially what he's doing is he's holding power to account. He's actually holding those people responsible. And these are the people that have not just hurt Harry and Meghan and his kids. They're the people who've hounded his mother. They've hounded Charles. They've hounded William and Kate and those children. And he's standing up to that. The jealousy and bitterness in that family and the way it's a hierarchy is so twisted, because that is admirable. And wouldn't any parent be so thrilled that a child, they'd raised a child, they'd created a child that was willing to do that, to do what they thought was right, to stand up against the most hideous smearing and try and get some sort of justice? Would they not be proud? But sadly, in this royal family and in dysfunctional families, the answer to that is no. Because remember, you're more loved by the family the more obedient you are to the system. So in a healthy family, independence, strength, you know, bravery, support, these are all like healthy love, especially for your child. You know, you would be cheering on your child's independence. If you raise a child that has their boundaries and stands up for themselves and speaks truth to power and wants to do good in the world, in a healthy family, you'd be thinking, wow, I'm so proud, I've done so well, you know, I'm going to support them however I can. In that system and in dysfunctional systems, your role in the family you're not supposed to come out of, and you get punished for your independence. And this is conditioning over a long period of time. And Harry actually does mention this in Spare, and I'll make a video about this, how he was kind of brought up not to be independent. And then when he got old enough and realised, wait, I haven't really formed my independence as an adult yet, I feel like pretty far behind in a lot of ways, he was then mocked for it, even though the very system in that family requires him to remain in a kind of child state all the time, which is why it's so ironic that they call him childish now, when actually no, he's acting in a really adult and mature manner because he's taking himself out of it. And I think the reaction from Charles to this situation, which, let me just say, some people will say, oh, he hasn't made any public reaction, and to me that in itself is a reaction. Why on earth would you not back up your son doing that? Why on earth would you not say, I support my son, I hope it goes really well for him, even if he's scared? I understand that not everyone has the same personality as Harry. There are good people who are frightened, right? But there's a difference between being frightened, and you can be frightened and say, oh gosh, I wouldn't do it, but I really, really hope it goes well for you, and thank you, and you know, I'm here for you if you need me. There's a difference between that and whatever's going on here with Harry. It's like he's being punished in this weird way for standing up to his own abusers and for standing up to the people who've abused his family. What sort of, and this happens in dysfunctional family dynamics. In a healthy family, abusers are held to account, right? People want the people in the family to be safe. In a dysfunctional system, because the idea is to protect the idea of the family rather than the individuals in it, anything will be done to protect and hide abuse within the family. Therefore, anyone who talks about it gets reframed as the bad one in the family system. And I think there are two reasons, mainly, why this is not something that Charles supports. Two main ones. I mean, there's probably loads more, but just psychologically speaking. So number one is that it shows Charles up. So this is a family where, remember, it's based on hierarchy, like warring PR camps, and it makes him feel bad. We know that when Harry made a statement against the racism Meghan faced, in Spare, he says that his father and William were angry because it showed them up, right? Rather than them thinking, good on you, Harry, and in fact, we're going to join you, and yeah, let's do the same for our partners and let's all work together, they felt shown up. It was jealousy, it was bitterness. Like, rather than thinking, thank goodness, that's a really great thing to do, it was, oh no, he's going to look a bit better than us. Like, that's not healthy. You know, families shouldn't be running like that. And I think, second of all, the great shame of this is that the person that Harry's become, we know now that Harry has become that person in spite of his father, not because of him. This isn't really something his father can claim, and we also see that in dysfunctional families, where if a parent can claim something that someone's done, like got a characteristic or a skill that the family can claim and that they approve of, then they'll claim it, right? Because it's a trophy. But if it's something you're doing on your own, sometimes the people in that family can actually feel slighted by it. You know, it actually feels to them like an attack. And when we look at Diana, and I know obviously it's ridiculous to say, well, Harry's Diana's son, and I'm not saying, you know, William and Harry are both Diana's sons, they both loved her very much, she loved them very much. But what I will say about what Harry has got from Diana, which is pretty amazing actually when you think about it, is that he is somebody who is going to speak truth to power. Something they would have called like naive in Diana, and in some ways I think Diana was naive when she first went in because she was so young, but the things that they wrongfully call naive with Diana, you know, they paint her as this like waif-like person, like, you know, unstable and little girlish and kind of like tantruming and dramatic, and we do that to women. And they're also kind of trying to do that with Harry. It's a bit different for men, so they've made him kind of tantruming, right? Sulking and tantruming and difficult. But really, that is an abusive system calling the most mature people childish, essentially, because it's much more mature to stand up against oppression and injustice and abuse. It's so much more mature to do that, and it shows up everybody else. And that's why in society, whenever you get someone who comes forward, like a politician who doesn't want to just go into the same system, who actually wants justice, who actually wants to help people and change the system, that's why they get destroyed. Because other people in the system, they feel so, their ego is such a big deal here, that rather than thinking, wow, that person's like a shining light, I want to be more like that, let's work together, they think, oh no, they might make me look bad, we've got to destroy them. And also there's all this talk, isn't there, about, oh, Harry's like betrayed his family, he's done this to his father. But no, Harry has repeatedly shown up for his father. After his treatment by the firm and by the press, he still showed up to that coronation. He showed up on time. He showed up in the clothes he was meant to be there for. He didn't cause any sort of scene. He showed his love for his father. He showed up, and he didn't have to. But Charles can't show up for Harry, and again, we see that in these dysfunctional relationships, and it's sad because I'm not saying that Charles doesn't love Harry. Harry himself says that he knows his dad does love him, but it's not that kind of mature parental love that a child needs, or even an adult child needs. It's very much Harry making excuses for his father, right? It's Harry showing up almost in that kind of parental role. Harry is showing the most maturity out of the people in that system, which is kind of like Diana did, and it's more complicated with Diana because they actually drove her into mental health issues. So she kind of fell more into that trap of people saying, oh, look, you know, she's crazy and she's paranoid. And it's like, no, this was someone who's emotionally mature, somebody who is at peace with their emotions and is actually struggling in a system which is absolutely stifling. Somebody in that system who has like healthy empathy and emotional intelligence was always going to struggle there. You know, what we saw with Diana, and again, I'm no royalist, but I do have a lot of time for her because this is a girl that was groomed in, right? She was a teenager. She was used. She went through all that pain. They tried to paint her as crazy. You know, she had like breakdowns and she suffered. And they acted like she was this unreliable person, like a loose cannon. She wasn't really shown love. You know, everything was so unhealthy for her in that system, but she held on to her voice. Somehow, miraculously, Diana got out. And I know her story ended really, really horrifically. But if you think about that, it makes me think a little bit of, there's a character Sansa Stark on Game of Thrones. If you think of her progression, something inside her clung on, right, to who she was and to her voice. And she managed, while she was in there, to get that book out, to hold on to who she was. She took on a system which was so stacked against her. They could smear her, they could do anything they wanted. They had control over her children. She went up against this absolutely massive power. And that's quite remarkable. And that's what Harry also seems to have in him. And so what we see in Harry is we see somebody who is sticking their neck out, right, for everybody else. And there's so many quotes I could give you, but I've got to go, so I'll make a longer one on this at another time. But this is the press. These are the people who have attacked that whole family. It should never have been on Harry. Harry was a little boy, and the adults in that system should have done this already. A parent should be shielding that child. It should have been Charles that stuck his neck out. It should have been Charles that said, this is not going to happen to my sons, because Diana tried. Diana tried her best with what she had, and she suffered a lot of issues and a lot of problems because of the wounding of that awful system. Harry is now being the shield for the next generation, and he is one of the younger ones. How sad is that? That nobody in the older generations helped him, and now they're kind of actively against him when he's actually doing this for all of them. This was Charles's fight, right? And it was his parents' fight, and it goes back and back and back. But it's so interesting in these systems that when someone steps forward, when someone says, you know what, I'm going to take these hits and I'm going to do it because I want the next generation to have it better and because it's not right. When you get someone brave and bold like that, it is extremely precious because that opens the door for everybody else. We should never ask children to endure abuse for our sake, and that is essentially what Charles is doing. You know, in Charles saying to Harry, don't take them on, it's suicide, it's dangerous, and now it's coming out that it seems Charles has got connections with the press because he's scared of them. And I know it's difficult. I understand that it's a system and that he's scared too. But your job as a parent is to shield your children. It shouldn't be the other way around. He didn't fight it. So now his son is having to fight it. His youngest son is having to fight it. And that youngest son is facing ridicule, hatred, smearing. They're trying to make him a hate figure. And yet there's something of Diana in him because he's still going. And I think because I've said this before, he's one of the only ones that actually takes the life of service thing to heart. Because him doing this is protecting his children, it's protecting his wife, it's protecting William and Kate, it is protecting their children. You know, there are two types of people in this world. I'm going to wrap this up, but this is my theory, that if you go through trauma and abuse, there's two sorts of reactions to this. One reaction is you've been abused, you've been traumatized, and you tell yourself, oh, it was fine, and then you enact it on other people. You rationalize it in your mind. In fact, sometimes you might feel powerful because you think, well, I went through it, why shouldn't everyone else? I was all right. Not realizing that that's not all right. Thinking that that was okay and to inflict it on other people. You didn't come out of that unscathed, and it was not fine all along. You get people who perpetuate systems, they become complicit, they become part of it. I do have sympathy for them though, of course, because they've gone through the system. But then you get the other sort of person who goes through abuse, who goes through trauma. And what they do is very different, because what they decide is they say, I went through it, therefore nobody else should have to. I do not want anyone else to go through what I did. They don't start thinking it's a rite of passage, like, oh, I'm all right, it was fine. They're big enough and brave enough and vulnerable enough to say, I was hurt. I was hurt. I'm going to do it differently, and I am going to change it for the next generation. And that's where we get activists, that's where we get actual change. And it takes people like that in society, people who are brave, to change the world. And I just thought it was really interesting because, you know, I talk about this with politicians a lot, but essentially in terms of family systems and the press, that's what Harry's doing. He's not backing down. It basically shows everyone else up, and it's really, really sick, I will keep saying this, that they are not backing him on this, because he's not just doing this for himself, he's doing this for them. And yet Harry's always framed as the narcissist. It's really, really interesting. And thank you for watching. I'll see you soon for another one, which is much more informational because I've really got to go. But I love you, and I'll see you really soon. Bye.